Shalom. Giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachahakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. And as always, we give peace and salutations unto the elect. We're going to go in the news. All right. Prophecy watch. In today's lesson, being as though there's a lot going on centered around Washington, D.C. All right. I'm going to get into some history, which we know Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States of America. OK, and pretty much we see that Nero Trump is getting things kicked off with a spirit centered around. All right. Washington, D.C., which, if you didn't know, the first name given to that area, all right, was Rome, Maryland. Okay. As a matter of fact, I just asked chat, was Washington, D.C. once called Rome, Maryland? You're asking whether Washington, D.C. was once called Rome, and the answer is yes, but with some importance, all right, or important historical nuance. And then it goes into the history, which you can look it up. But the original name of Washington, D.C., the capital of Babylon the Great, all right, was Rome, Maryland. You see that? And it eventually became a city-state, all right, which pretty much operates on its own merit. And it's the hub, one of the hubs of witchcraft here in Babylon the Great. You see? Again, you can look into that history. And again, as I looked up here, I just typed in Washington, D.C. and Rome, which we've done videos on this. When we came into the truth, our apostles, bishops, and elders, all right, told us these very things, all right, that now everybody's, hopping on the bandwagon and can see it. But as you can see, there's various videos. Washington, D.C. is Rome reborn. The hidden history they don't want you to know. You can look these videos up. All right, here's one here.
You'll often hear people say that Washington, D.C. feels a little like Paris. A big part of that is because of this guy, Pierre L'Enfant, the Frenchman who designed the basic plan for the city. But if you look closely, you'll see a lot of influence from Rome, too, starting with the Jefferson Memorial, which is based on the Pantheon. Union Station looks a lot like the Arch of Constantine. The Neptune Fountain at the Library of Congress was inspired by the Trevi Fountain. And, of course, the Capitol, one of the most iconic buildings in the United States, has a giant dome modeled on Michelangelo's dome at St. Peter's Basilica. What other Roman-influenced buildings have you found in D.C.?
All right, and you also had the Capitoline building in ancient Rome, and you have the Capitol here. All right, the Seven Hills, things we'll get into, and we've done various videos going into the image of the beast, because the thing is, you have particular Israelite camps teaching that the image of the beast is a mere standstill image of, white Jesus, the other white meat. Serapis Christus, Cesare Borgia, and, that's just not true. The image of the beast, all right, because what is the beast? The beast, all right, that is in current power, pursuing the Daniel the 7th chapter, is, all right, the ancient Roman Empire, ran by, all right, Esau, Edom. See, and the revival of Rome would stand as the final kingdom that would be in rulership before the Most High God Yahweh sent his only begotten Son, Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, back. Okay, so when we deal with the image of the beast, we're dealing with a system that is rooted, all right, in the ancient Western Roman Empire. As a matter of fact, when you get Revelation, the 13th chapter, okay, Revelation 13:2, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, because this very beast system we live in started with the Greeks. Okay, the foundations of the rulership of Esau, Edom, goes back to the Greeks All right. And he established himself as, a major power through the Romans. Both were powerful, but Rome conquered more. Okay. So this very beast system we live in started with, the Greeks. This is why you see an influx of Greco-Roman culture here in Babylon the Great, hence Greek fraternities, Nikes, which is the goddess, the Greek goddess of victory, the Greco-Roman god of healing, Asclepius, which the U.S. med system uses the serpent on the pole. All right, which that also goes back to the Egyptians, Egypt, which the Greeks and the Romans got their system of worship from, all right, Canaan, going back to, Mesopotamia, which is Babel. Okay, the Egyptians, this is exactly where they received, all right, the gods and the system of rulership that they would, eventually rule with. They just added their spin to it. Okay. So this beast system started with the leopard, which is the Greeks. And how do we know that? We go to Daniel, the 7th chapter. Okay, he goes through the empires that will be in rulership before he sent back his only begotten son. Okay, Daniel 7:6. All right, which this marks the captivities of the Israelites. When you read Daniel, the 7th chapter, these four beasts mark the four major captivities which the Israelites will be scattered amongst, leading up to their deliverance to reestablish the throne of David. We know that we're scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, but biblically and prophetically, the focus would be on the Assyrian Babylonian Empire, Daniel 7:4. Okay. The Medo-Persian Empire. When you read the Bible, you're reading, especially when you get into the histories, you're reading about Israelites in these captivities. Even the New Testament is the fourth beast. The Apocrypha is the leopard, the third beast. Rome, all right, is the fourth beast. You see? And pretty much the revival of this fourth beast would mark as the last kingdom that will be in rulership before the Most High made a decision. That's why it's important, because the revival of Rome, right, would be Babylon the Great. That is Babylon the Great. Okay. So as a matter of fact, let's go to the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter. All right. This is Mystery Babylon. Okay. Babal, right? Just getting to the point. It means confusion, but here in the Greek, allegorically of Rome as the most corrupt seat of idolatry and the enemy of Christianity, or the followers of Yahweh Shai. So Babylon the Great is the revival of Rome. See that? The Babylon the Great is the revival of Rome. The revival of the fourth beast. Again, when you're reading the New Testament, you're reading the history of this fourth beast. When you're reading the Apocrypha, and particularly the book of Maccabees, you're reading of history associated with the Israelites scattered in the Greek Empire, the leopard. So Esau, Edom coming into power, okay, and establishing a so-called civilization, which is nothing civil about Esau's so-called civilizations, but it was the Greeks. And then you had the Romans. Okay. And we know the Western Roman Empire fell. This is where, as you keep going, as it says, Revelation 13:2, and we have videos going deeply into, Revelation 13, Daniel 7. So look that up or ask. Pretty sure you can find it. Okay. And it says, and the dragon gave him his power. See, the dragon is the ancient Western Roman Empire. And in the chapter prior, it establishes the red dragon, all right, with the children of Satan and it ties it to the Roman Empire and Herod the Great, okay, who ultimately wanted to have the Messiah put to death so that he would not grow up to be that sacrifice. And we have lessons going deep into this, but Revelation 12 and 4 and 3, and I beheld, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. Esau, Edom is red, right? It's letting you know the name Rothschild, red shield. Okay. And a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Okay. Meaning a beast system, man. Okay. Vassal states. Okay. And particular empires that ultimately would carry on his spirit, leading all the way to the very end. And again, look up the videos on these chapters, because I wanted to get into some information that I typed up on ChatGPT, but I'm just going to, I like to open my videos with a intro. All right. It says, in his tail, the red dragon, all right, drew the third part of the stars of heaven, which is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, who were in the Roman captivity. Remember, in the Assyrian captivity, the northern kingdom left and came over here to the Americas, pursuant to the book of 2nd Esdras, the 13th chapter. Okay. And pretty much Judah, Benjamin, and Levi went into the Babylonian captivity, then the Medo-Persian captivity, and then the Greek captivity, and then the Roman captivity. That's why when Yahushua came on the scene, he had the scribes, the Pharisees, the Essenes. These were Jews in the 4th beast Roman captivity. When you read the book of Maccabees, those were Jews, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the Maccabean family being Levi, right, that were in the Greek captivity. You see? So this dragon took down Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. All right. They were vassals to the Roman Empire. This is why you had many zealots fighting. They didn't want to be under the Romans, and did cast them to the earth. Being cast to the earth means being in a lower state. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And that speaks to the Herodians, the Herodian Empire, all right, which were Amalekites, okay, who ultimately got control over the Holy Land, okay, Jerusalem. Just like today, you got the small hats calling themselves the real Jew. Well, back then you had the Herodian dynasty saying basically they were the king of the Jews, trying to get that birthright back. You can find that history in Matthew, the 2nd chapter, where Herod wanted to put the Messiah to death. This is why he had his father and his mother had to flee to Egypt. So this same dragon is spoken about in the next chapter, Revelation 13. Okay. And 2, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, because it started with the Greeks, who were Edomites, who stole the land of the Japhetic people. All right. And his feet were the feet of a bear that goes to rush, in his mouth, the mouth of a lion. All right. Because ultimately this was all born out of British, the small hat, and America and the small hat, because America came first. All right. Pretty much come out of the British Empire. See? And they overall rule with the authority, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So the dragon, the red dragon, Rome, is what gave this beast system its power and authority. And we're witnessing that power and authority rule in today's world. And that's what we're going to get into. It says, and I saw one of his heads, it was wounded unto death, and his deadly wound was healed. See? So the wound that was wounded, the head that was wounded to death, is the Western Roman Empire. And what we're telling you is that the deadly wound being healed, starting with the Renaissance, which I asked, ChatGPT, is it safe to say that the Renaissance marked the revival of the Western Roman Empire? It said that's a fascinating angle, which that's the angle a lot of people already know. Surprised that, chats, like chat usually goes harder, but, the Renaissance did look and feel like a Roman ghost coming back to life. but with the twist. All right, because prophecy had to be fulfilled, and they would rule. They would have more room to rule. They will rule the world. So of course it's going to look different, but it's coming with the same energy, which that's what the image of the beast living and speaking is talking about, as we'll show you. Let me hurry up. It says ideas, what was revived in the Renaissance. Ideas like the humanism, which is big today. Okay, the belief in self and man controls his own destiny, and man should solve the problems, not God. All right, we're equipped enough to, operate without God. The human aspect, which is based upon the flesh, the pride of life. Republicanism. Okay, natural law, all lifted from Cicero, Seneca, and other Roman thinkers. Art and architecture, domes, arcs, columns, and the Florence Duomo and St. Peter's Basilica look like they've been plucked straight from Rome. Law and governance. Renaissance jurists re-engaged the Roman law via Justinian's Corpus Juris Civilis. All right. Laying the groundwork for modern European legal codes. Okay. And remember, America was born out of the beast. All right. In a sense. Okay. The British Empire. All right. They established America, and then the small hats, and everything that they're doing forwards that colonization, forwards that, conquering, and that just, racial superiority. Language and learning. Latin was reborn as the universal scholarly tongue. Okay. It says, basically he didn't go hard, because as you saw, we've done various videos going into the image of the beast in Rome and how America ties to Rome and the different customs. And here it is, ChatGPT supposed to be this big, smart, power, and that's all it comes up with. Or you can just type in what customs in America go back to ancient Rome, and you look these things up on your own. Because in Revelation, the 13th chapter, after this deadly wound was healed, the nations went around, worshiping the dragon, worshiping Rome, ultimately bowing to the Roman authority. All right. But with a new vibe, then you get technology eventually added to it. Okay. We're living in the revival of Rome. Okay. And he would, basically make war with the saints, take them down, blaspheme Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. And it's promised that the one who led into captivity is going to go into captivity in verse 9 and 10. He ain't going to get away with this. But then we get to something very interesting in Revelation 13 and 11, where it says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. We always bring out that this is America, giving you insight, all right, to Daniel 7 and 7. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And he had great iron teeth, his military, his sword. Esau was blessed with the sword. Okay, the Roman Empire. And it devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, their military, which they studied, the Assyrians, okay, were brutal. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, because of how they brought their, emperors and leaders in was through a Senate. Okay, which we see that same system today. So I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, which is the revival of Rome, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And the three that were first is the Spanish, the French, and the British. After the Renaissance was reborn in Italy, if you watch Esau in history, Spanish, the French, the British, Germany was up in there, right? Ruled, all right, or had their time, right? And what did they do? Okay, eventually you have the Revolutionary Wars. Okay, the Spanish, the French, the British warring with each other. Edomites, these so-called peaceful people who have never, done anything wrong. Here they fighting each other as they've always fought each other. The Greeks and the Romans fought each other. You're fighting each other here in America, as we're going to get into. So this horn, this little horn represents Babylon the Great. Okay, because it is the revival of the fourth beast. It's the revival of Rome. And as you read Daniel the 7th chapter, this is where the kingdom that will be in rulership before the Most High set up the kingdom. So if this happens to be that final captivity, if we're going by Daniel's prophecy, this has to be that final captivity. This has to be the revival of Rome, which is ran by Esau, Edom, the red dragon, right? And ultimately, Esau's the end of the world. He would rule that modern day Babylon. But he would do it with the energy of the ancient Western Roman Empire. So this is where the Most High sets a judgment. Okay, basically, these would be the ones as it's expounded upon. The little horn is expounded on in Daniel 7:21. And I beheld the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. And this is why they were able to take the northern kingdom down, bring Judah over here, Judah, Benjamin, on slave ships all across the world. See, he made war with us. He until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was set. The Most High sets a judgment to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Okay, so he's breaking it, and we've got various scriptures on Daniel the 7th chapter. We got various videos on Daniel 7. That's a known breakdown coming from the men of the Lord. We got breakdowns on Revelation 13, but when you read Revelation 13, it's giving you a little more insight to that little horn. In here in Revelation 13:11, I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, the democratic and republican system, mimicking the plebeians and patricians of the Roman Empire. See? And he spake as a dragon. So he had two horns like a lamb, but he spake as a dragon. He's bringing forth that spirit of Rome, but he's going to bring forth the draconian measure, which the Romans did that. They kicked people out of their empire. There was points where they said if you didn't bow to the emperor, you were committing treason. And laws were passed that made it legal to burn followers of Yahweh Shai in the streets. All right, to put to death people who were worshiping other gods and proclaiming that another king was coming. That's what they're getting ready to do again. See? And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. See, and what's the beast whose deadly wound was healed? That's the ancient Western Roman Empire. It was healed through the Renaissance. America is an extension of the Renaissance. Okay. As a matter of fact, let's act to see if it will tell the truth about that. Is America an extension of the Renaissance? See what it says. That's a short way to frame it. Because of many respects, America is kind of a Renaissance project carried forward across the Atlantic. They went to the New World and brought that image. And white Jesus is an aspect, all right, when you deal with the image of the beast. It comes with many philosophies, many deceptions, many, ideas, gods, all right, sodomy. It's very freaky. It goes back to the ways of Canaan, the image of the beast. You see? And they use Christianity as a means to trick people, as a means to spread wine, to get people in a stupor. And they just used it to forward their image. They used it to forward them as being the chosen people. It just forwarded Edomite supremacy. That's all your Judeo-Christianity and the state of Israel. It just forwards white supremacy, Edomite supremacy. That's all it is, because it's Esau's kingdom. It's Esau's rulership. So America is a neo-Renaissance. Okay, you have, and it's given some history. The Renaissance came about the 14th through 16th century, reawakened Europe to Greco-Roman learning. See that? Greco-Roman learning. That's what you learn. That's how we were raised as Greco-Romans. We were Gentiles. We were heathen. We were uncircumcised. We were raised in filth, confusion. Okay? And just because you had a family, you ate at the dinner table with your dad and mom. Okay, what were y'all eating? Catfish. It was still confusion. It was just a better version of shit, you know? Because every Jake didn't have it as completely hard, and we came from those situations, you know. But the Lord, He preserved us from that. That ain't how we supposed to be living. Ye were Gentiles carried away of those dumb idols. So here in America, we underwent Hellenization and Romanization all over again. Right? Because our final captivity would be the reawakening. All right. All right. Starting at Europe. But again, that whole idea of America came out of Europe, basically. It's still a child of the bankers. All right. Of London. A corporation ruled out of London because they control your money. Okay, they own the birth certificate. They own you. They have you as a number in the system. Okay, then you had the Age of Enlightenment. All these scientists came together and built upon that classical Renaissance and repackaged it and brought forth more confusion. Repackaged their gods into science, pseudoscience. Okay, and then they would use that pseudoscience to then conquer the world and say, we better than y'all. This is who you really are. This is, you know, America as a neo-Renaissance. Humanism, see? The idea that individuals have inherent worth and rights central to the Declaration of Independence. Boom. Republicanism revived in Renaissance Florence, carried to America's Senate, checks, and civic structures. Architect and symbolism. Okay, we already know that. I mean, you got the Coliseum, fast food, okay, heated floors, cement bridges, okay, all that goes back to Rome. Nike goes back to the Greeks, the Greco-Roman god of victory, a vision of progress, the belief that rational improvement and new knowledge hallmarks the Renaissance are all baked into the American DNA. So yes, America is an extension of the Renaissance. And again, Revelation 13 and 12 says, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him and causeth the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast whose daily wound was healed. So now you're worshiping the idols of Rome, the emperors of Rome, all of it is back. Okay, he would use that same power as the Western Roman Empire to rule his kingdom. And then the Lord would give him miracles to forward that. See? He doeth great wonders. He deceived them by miracles. He had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as will not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And this is where we are now. Before he brings his mark, he's going to pass legislation centered around you bowing to his image, bowing to his science as God, bowing to his way of rule, his gods, his idols, and even merge yourself with machine to recreate, to aid him in recreating man in his image. Okay, so the image of the beast. Let's look up the word image. icon or icon. That's where you get the word icon. Likeness, image. See? Used in the moral likeness of renewed men to God. Renewed, it goes into renewing something. One in whom the likeness of any is seen. So we're seeing the likeness of Rome, okay, in America and what it's doing. The image of the beast thus speaks. So when you deal with Washington, D.C., which again, there's various videos going into all roads lead to pagan Rome, Vatican, Washington, D.C. connection, who runs America. These videos are up here. There's only so far you're going to get on YouTube, but the Lord is allowing certain information to come out through even heathen, through Esau. His own tongue is falling on himself. But now these Christians want to tie Rome to America and, Babylon and all these go into the mark of the beast. But you know who said it first, man. Now, when you deal with a Washington, D.C., all right, you hear about it all your life. But I just asked, what is the role of Washington, D.C. in America and in the world, period? It says it is the seat of government. It houses all three branches, Congress, Capitol Hill, okay, the president and the Supreme Court. Every law, veto, or ruling that shapes national life flows through here. See that? Flows through here. See? And see, we're living at a time where the nations no longer want to flow through Babylon the Great. Okay? Let's get Jeremiah 51. Jeremiah 51 and 44, 144. And I will punish Baal in Babylon, call Halal Yahweh Bashem Yahshai, and I will bring forth out of his mouth that which he swallowed up. Okay? And the nation shall not flow together any more unto him. Yea, the wall of Babylon shall fall. See, the wall of Babylon will fall. But as you can see, Babylon, all right, via Washington, D.C. in particular, all right, that's the seat of his government. Okay? And there you go. Symbolic capital. D.C. isn't just functional, it's meant to embody the Republic's ideas, memorials, and monuments. Neutral ground. The founders made it a federal district, not in any state, to avoid giving any one state special power. That still shapes debates about D.C. statehood and representation today. You have people within the government, because they will be divided, that don't like the position that, Esau uses D.C. to just, dominate, overrule, veto. Okay. Why do you think Israel is not called out by the UN about its war crimes? Now, does not the UN, United Nations, supposed to represent peace? Well, how many war crimes, all right, and breaking of particular statutes within the UN law, all right, Israel and the United States continually breaks them. But what happens? It gets vetoed. So the UN doesn't check them. They're never held responsible for breaking even their own law. But you have particular people that call that out. See? Policy hub. Okay? Every major lobby, nonprofit, and think tank has a presence here. Okay? And this is how presidencies have pretty much been bought out. All right, the doings of the government work toward the benefit of the Amalekite, the small hat, not you American people, because they have bought it out. Okay, they have full control. The modern day Chaldeans operated like that. They were, behind closed doors, always operating, but when things weakened, they were able to present themselves as the ones that are going to save everybody through their science and through their, and then they eventually become the government, the ruler. This thing, and it's a lot. In the world, the global command center, decisions made in DC ripple across the world, military deployments, economic sanctions, climate agreements. See? And that whole climate situation goes back to what is called the Club of Rome. Okay? See that? It literally is right in your face, man. Cultural projection. Museums like the Smithsonian Institution and Library of Congress and memorials made it a showcase of American values. All right, to visiting leaders and tours alike. And Esau Edom is now mad that because the majority of his rulership is the sword, ruling with the sword, destroying, killing people, destroying Jake, enslaving people. And now that is being pointed out in the museum that this is how we got this. This is what we did. Now Trump wants to ban it and say, let's talk about more of the good side of slavery, the good side of killing everybody. Revelation 13:7, it was given unto him a sword to make war with the saints. So the Lord sent him on us and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindred and tongues and nations. And this is what he's been able to do. And as we're showing you, at the forefront of how he rules over these nations, Washington, D.C. has a major role. Okay, we can ask as well. Okay, what are the parallels? How you spell that shit? Parallels between DC and ancient and Rome. I just put Rome. Ancient Rome. What are the parallels between DC and ancient Rome? Okay. Oh, I believe I typed that in up here. I got ahead of myself. I said, how can DC be linked to ancient Rome? There you go. Okay. Capital. It says, that's a sharp question. You're seeing the way Washington, D.C. borrows not just power, but also imagery from ideas of Rome. Capitol Hill versus Capitoline Hill. All right. The U.S. Capitol sits on a hill, just as the Roman Senate met on the Capitoline. All right. And there was a point where in ancient Rome, they stormed the Capitol. That's actually something that happened. And then on 1/6, at number 6, they supposedly raided the Capitol building. That happened before in ancient Rome. You can look it up. Columns and domes. We already know that. Mall as a form. Like the Roman Forum, the National Mall is both ceremonial space and stage for public life, protest, and celebration. Okay, that's the ancient Rome. That all goes back to ancient Rome. Political parallels. A republican root, because democracy has its roots in the Greek Empire. Okay, democracies really, go back to the Greeks. All right, the Draco in Athens, Greece was known for their democracy. Okay, but the republic aspect, which they did have something that represented the people like a democracy. Because democracy means the rule of the people. So the Rome did have parties, geared towards, the voice of the poor. But it says republican roots, expansion of power. Just as Rome grew from city-state to empire, DC oversees a republic that expanded across the continent. All right, then projected military power globally. See that? Globally. And then let's get Revelation 16:3. It says, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon. All right. The revival of Rome. Okay. And out of the mouth of the beast system. Okay. EU and NATO. And out of the false prophet. All right. The Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican. Okay. So DC, all right, is at the forefront of this dragon, all right, ruling. It says, for they are the spirits of devils working miracles which go forth unto the kings of the earth and the whole world to gather them into the battle of the great day of the God Almighty. So they're going to operate in such a crazy fashion with their colonization and their wickedness that the whole world is going to turn on them, and it's going to lead to World War III. This is where we're almost at. See? So it says, world capital. Ancient Rome was the hub of roads, laws, and armies. Today, DC plays the role through treaties, sanctions, and the Pentagon, which is filled with freakism and PEDO activity. But here it is. You got Trump want to wage war on something and fix something. Well, why don't he fix that pedo stuff? Which he supposedly was going to expose the Epstein files. He was going to expose, what was going on with the Clintons. He was going to, expose this and all, the pizza stuff. It came to naught. Nothing came of it. Nobody's getting in trouble. Okay. Bread and circuses versus politics and spectacle. Rome used public games and grand building projects to keep unity. See, and today they give you sports, and now the boxing match is getting stupid. Jake Paul fighting Tank Davis, Floyd Mayweather supposed to be fighting. It's just a big spectacle. Sports, all of the football players tell you how it's rigged. Basketball, it's just entertainment. But it keeps the people with something to hope for. You got a bunch of slaves in Baltimore screaming at the top of their lungs because Lamar Jackson then ran a 200-yard touchdown. And it's not like brothers don't watch sports, you see, but it's a form of numbing the reality of your situation. And it has its own spectacles, national parades, political theater, televised hearings, weddings. And see, when you get Revelation 18, the Lord is going to do away with all that madness, man. Revelation 18 and 22, in the voice of harpers and musicians and pipers and trumpet, all these stupid parades, because you're parading sin around. You're parading wickedness around. It shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman, whosoever craft he shall be, because you have all control, all of the resources. This is why you're able to do so many experiments. Okay? You have all these craftsmen creating devices to do evil through the work of the spiritual demon Satan. Shall be found any more at all in thee, and the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. So you're going to be through. And the light of a candle shall no more shine at all in thee. Your wisdom is going to be confounded. See? Now, it says here, all right, I forgot to read this, centralization tension. Rome struggled with balancing local autonomy versus imperial authority. We're seeing that today. Local autonomy, all right, your senators, your governors, and different things of a particular state having control over their local region versus imperial authority, where now Trump is saying, I'm taking control, all right, over your government. I control, the what goes on pretty much. And that power can be used to establish things that aren't in the interest of the one who was ruling over it. All right. So centralized tension, we're seeing that today. Rome struggled with balancing local autonomy versus imperial authority. And we see Trump and Gavin Newsom arguing back and forth. You see this dude over here in Texas in a wheelchair his name is right, I was about to say Jerry Jones. His name was right at the tip of my um dude in a wheelchair. What's his name, man? Texas Senator. What's his name? Who's Texas? What is he? The senator? Yeah, Ted Cruz. Not Ted Cruz. No, is it Ted Cruz? No. Okay, Texas. What is he, man? It's slipping my mind. What's this dude's name? Greg Abbott. Okay. A tree fell on him in 1984 while he was jogging. Texas Governor Abbott. See with ChatGPT, you can ask, what would Greg Abbott? Just ask, what would Greg Abbott of Texas be doing in ancient Rome? Fun question. You're imagining Greg Abbott lifted out of Austin and dropped into the marble sandal of ancient Rome. And Austin, Texas has a spirit on it, man. But you'll get the best food. It's just a very liberal, free. It's a trip. It's a nice city. And the people there, they have a particular spirit, man. And it's weird that he didn't bring that here to Dallas. Anyway, it says, and dropped into the marble of ancient Rome. Abbott as a Roman magistrate. In today's U.S., he's a governor. And you see sometimes he arguing back and forth with Trump. That's basically the point I brought this out. Appointed to run a territory, yada, yada, yada. Abbott's modern rights fights with federal government, immigration, and border control. See, they didn't agree with the left, National Guard echo Rome's provincial pushback. Think of governors who sometimes resisted senatorial decrees if they felt the territory knew best. In Rome, that tension often led to lawsuits, appeals of Senate. If escalated, legions clashing with legions. And this is what we're getting ready to see. Okay, these different Edom, the Lord is going to break this thing up. These different Edomites are going to start fighting with one another. Okay? Cicero. I mean, I was just showing you what you can do, but going back up to here, it says centralization and tension. All right, political parallels to Rome. Okay, centralization, tension. Rome struggled with balancing local autonomy versus imperial authority. And that's even happening on a national scale with the EU. All right. And these different vassals to Babylon the Great that makes it a beast system. They're growing weary with the imperial authority in America. His look is more stout than his fellows. It says DC faces echoes with federal versus state in debates over DC's own lack of representation. Okay. And I said, can you expound on centralization tension and use examples today, i.e. Gavin Newsom and Trump tension? When you bring up Trump and Newsom's tension in the same breath, you're circling around the fault line, the tug of war between federal power, Washington, D.C., and state sovereignty, Sacramento, Tallahassee, Austin. Okay. Certain places that are kind of like kicking back, pushing back. Rome wrestled with the same thing. Local magistrates versus authority, and it often flared into political crisis. And this is where we're getting ready to see the Roman parallel. In the Republic, cities and provinces had their own laws and leaders. All right. It's called the United States, but each of the states do shit different. Right. But when it came time for that jab, okay, the authority, the DC was used to issue forth laws, all right, pretty much that you had to have it. All right. Which they're gonna use that power to bring forth the chip. It says in the Republic, cities and provinces had their own laws and leaders, but the Senate and latter the emperors pulled more strings over time. The tension sparked rebellion more than once. Think of Judea under Rome's governors. All right. Think about when the zealots, all right, which certain Jews, Sadducees, I believe, became a political party. All right. So they had a seat as a vassal of Rome. All right. And they became subject to that government. But you had particular Jews that were like, hell nah, man. We're not being represented. We're forwarding their shit. All right. That's where you get your zealots. All right. But that's happening amongst the people now. Tension is sparking amongst the people. People are figuring out they're getting duped. Right. States are figuring out they're being overcome with a system that, some of the leaders don't want to do that. Even when you look at Trump's recent, all right, call to, federalize these different states. Okay. As you can see, several states are pushing back. This is something that happened in ancient Rome. All right. Pushing back against Trump's recent proposals to deploy federal or National Guard troops to cities like Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Baltimore, Oakland, Chicago. California's pushing back. Illinois is pushing back. Other Democratic governors are pushing back. You even have military generals pushing back. Okay. Legal and constitutional stakes, Insurrection Act, and Posse Comitatus. They're saying that what he's doing violates, those acts, which they're going to continue to violate, and it will be vetoed. It ain't going to be dealt with. So this is why war is going to break out between Esau's own kind, right? It says experts warns that deploying troops without demand from local leaders may violate long-standing laws restricting military use in domestic law enforcement. California's suit, amongst others, question whether Trump's action is constitutionally unauthorized. Okay, unique DC versus states. While the federal government can more freely direct force in DC, due to its special status, deploying troops in states without gubernatorial consent raises serious concerns about executive power and states' rights. Okay. It says, and see, they control you through three forms of government. Legislative, executive, and judicial. They got control over all of it. So really, you can't. The bid of the small hat is going to be done. Okay. So we're seeing many kickbacks even in this very day. We're seeing aspects of the ancient Roman Empire play out right before our very eyes. That was, a theme in ancient Rome. Okay. How do these disagreements Here you go. The disagreements between U.S. and the federal government over Trump's troop deployments echo ancient Rome's in surprisingly direct ways. The parallel lies in central authority versus local autonomy, political tensions, and the use of military force. In Rome, the political republic often faced conflicts between the Senate, central authority, and provincial governors or city magistrates. Governors of provinces sometimes resisted Rome's dictates, especially over taxation, troop levies, and legal matters, leading to rebellions, appeals, and civil strife. Okay? Judea, which was a vassal of Rome, Jake, resisted Roman governors, leading to violent crackdowns. Oh, man. It says, governors like Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker opposed federal troop deployments, asserting state sovereignty. Legal challenges are filed to check what states see as executive overreach. The tension highlights the balance of power in federal system, similar to Rome's struggle between central imperium and provincial rights. And there's so much more that we would be able to look into. Okay? In Rome, legions could be sent to provinces to enforce law and suppress uprisings. Okay? And they're creating an uprise via these enchantments, like that thing in LA. Brothers who live in LA say it wasn't really happening like that. They were just little sectioned off places where people were so-called rioting, and they're just putting the camera in front of them. No, what happened with it? Is it still happening? But then now they're able to federalize it and use that as a means to say we got to get control of this. So we can send the troops, we can send the legion. Okay? Which is a certain amount of troops. But improper deployment often spark conflict with local elites. Provincial commanders could leverage local loyalty or resist central orders, leading to instability. America, sending federal or National Guard troops to cities without state consent mirrors the Roman risk. Central power and intervening in local jurisdictions. States resist to protect their own policing authority and maintain civil trust, much like provinces resisted Roman occupation forces, man. So it's the same thing happening all over again. That's the point of this video. Okay, when we go into the news today, these are reoccurring things that we constantly hear about. We seeing it, but you know, what does this mean prophetically? Well, the image of the beast is speaking and living, and we're seeing a likeness of ancient Rome in this particular kingdom right now. Which goes to Daniel, the 2nd chapter, right? When we see all of this arguing back and forth, we're looking at ancient Rome. In the right, the image living. Let's get Daniel 2. Rome, see? And the 4th kingdom shall be as strong as iron, for as much as iron break in pieces and subdue all things, and as iron that breaketh all these. Remember, Esau was blessed with the sword, man. Okay? And he broke in pieces. He took down the nations. Rome did that. But now you're looking at Rome, all right, as a world power. See? That's what we're looking at right here. See? So, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, right? Part of potter's clay and part iron, the kingdom shall be divided. See? The kingdom shall be divided. Okay, the feet and the toes represents the end of this vision, which is the revival of Rome. The beast system. And it will be part iron and part clay. All right. So it will have the strength of the iron that, the militarily, I mean, their sword is unmatched. Esau got that. Babylon, I mean, come on, man. The military is absolutely impeccable. Right? That sword is strong. Okay. But see, what the Lord is doing, all right, is what makes it even stronger is the vassal states. See, Rome had vassals, the Lombards, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Sueves. These different, that's the 10 horns. These different nations had their own shit going on, but they were subordinate to Rome. Well, you have the EU. They have their little countries and different things going on, but they all pledge allegiance to this beast system, all right, to forward their image through America. And DC is at the forefront of that shit, right? But now we see it all divided. They don't agree. They have the sword, but it's mixed with miry clay. They won't stick. Miry clay won't stick, okay, to an iron sword. Okay, and the miry clay represents politically they don't agree. Militarily, they don't even agree. Their sword is getting ready to be drawn against them. You got certain European countries that want to side with Russia. You got America threatening to leave NATO, which would put more pressure on Europe nations to defend Ukraine and, have to, ante up on, military might and be on guard against Russia, Iran. These European nations ain't going to want to do that. So what they're going to do, they're going to side with Russia. Okay. Turkey, which is a NATO nation, is going to side with Russia. And at the forefront of why is these small hats and America's, all right, allegiance to them. See, America's allegiance to the small hat is going to lead him into a war that, a snare that he ain't going to get out of. See? It says, and the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay. So the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And that's what we're looking at, a kingdom divided. Egyptian against Egyptian. See? All of these people are divided. See, what made this beast system strong was, a united Europe. Okay, the Treaty of Rome, I believe after World War II, to get Europe back, as this dominant, and, to a degree, you're winning, but you're divided. Y'all at each other's throats. Edomites hate each other. So it's partly strong, economically they don't agree with the NWO and the AI. One want to be ahead of the other. All right. But they're all bringing forth this MOTB system, man. But even within that, they don't agree. The elite don't agree. They're all divided. There's nothing but division going on amongst Esau, Edom, but he wants to present himself as this, beacon of peace. It says, hold up. The Roman parallel, all right, when we deal with tension and centralization, it says, in the Republic, cities and provinces have their own leaders, but the Senate and later the emperors pulled more strings over time. This tension sparked rebellion more than once. The empire lasted as long as local elites could be persuaded. See, local elites are persuaded. Your governors, even your presidents, they're all persuaded and forced to cooperate with central authority. Okay. The modern day Chaldeans. Okay. They wiggle themselves into power and everything is at their beck and call. Everything is doing the will of the small hat. The American version, the Ovid mandates. You see this word. Governors like Gavin Newsom in California impose stricter rules than federal guidelines while Trump pushed for reopening. That clash exposed whether DC or states had the last word on public health. See? There was division. That happened in ancient Rome. Okay, immigration and border policy. States like Texas, Abbott, and Florida DeSantis openly defy federal immigration enforcement, busing immigrants to D.C. and New York as a form of political theater. So, when they allowed these different nations to come through the border, Abbott and DeSantis would put them on a bus and send them to Washington, D.C. as a form of, they're just showing you they're divided. It says climate and energy policy. California pushes aggressive green standards that sometimes exceed or outright contradict federal ones, setting up legal fights with Washington. Election oversight. Trump repeatedly challenged the state-run election systems in 2020, seeking to override local specifications that put federal pressure on yada, yada, yada. It says centralization tension isn't just procedural, it shapes identity. Are we a union of states with latitude to chart their course, or a national DC ultimately decides? That unresolved balance in America's version of Rome's provincial politics. All right. Witty irony. Rome eventually tilted towards the imperial centralization under Caesar and Augustus, while America still pretends its 50 semi-independent laboratories. Whether it stays that way is an open question. All right. And pretty soon all of these states are going to be doing the bidding of, hold up. The bidding of the elite. Okay. Because Washington has been bought out. It's not used to forward the ideology of the founding fathers. It's used to forward the small hat. See that? So, hold up, give me 1 second. Yeah, it goes into a lot. So there are many parallels between the ancient Roman Empire and today's world. Okay. And at the very end, these devils are going to be divided. Rome, the revival of Rome will be divided. It would have the power of the sword, but they wouldn't agree. Okay. And the Lord is setting Egyptian against Egyptian. We're seeing that political turmoil. 2nd Esdras chapter 15 and 14 in the GNT. The world and the people in it are doomed. The war that will bring their destruction is very near. Nations will arm themselves and fight against other nations. All right. And there will be great political turmoil with one group trying to overpower another and gain control while ignoring the legitimate government. Okay. There will no longer be free access to the cities because of their struggle for power will bring destruction, terror, and total confusion wherever people live. Wow. Driven by famine and terrible suffering, people will assault their neighbors and mercilessly plunder their possessions. This is what's coming. See that? This is what's coming. You see, but when you read Revelation, the 13th chapter, right? When you read Revelation, the 13th chapter, let's see here. This pretty much America being birthed, all right, out of the again, a baby of the Renaissance. He would establish, the last leg of, all right, the heathen rulership, which would be headed by Babylon the Great, which would exercise the power of the first beast that was before him. See, and there are many parallels between America and Rome. Okay? Let's just ask, what are some greatest parallels between Rome and America? Political structure, republic, okay, Senate and Congress, both debating houses, that goes back to Rome. Military reach, Rome, legions posted across Britain, Gaul, Judea, North Africa, projecting power thousands of miles from the capital. And America does that. Okay, the DC does that. All over the world, they can show their force. Right? Even further than ancient Rome. America, bases in Europe, Asia, Middle East, Africa. DC directs a military footprint covering the globe. Covering the globe. See? That sword is heavy, but see, the Lord had to divide it up. Both wrestle with costs of sustaining such vast communities. Okay? Wealth and inequality. Rome, all right, grew a gulf between the senators and elite landowners and common citizens. All right. The Gracchi brothers famously tried land reforms to close the gap. America, rising inequality, wealth concentrated amongst elites with populist calls to reform the system. Okay? Culture and spectacle. Bread and circuses, gladiator games, festivals, all right, and grain droves kept the Roman masses appeased. American entertainment, politics, sports, media, partisan drama play a similar role in distracting or pacifying, confusing you. It's witchcraft. These fake relationships, right? That they these are people who are in bondage, man. And they're presenting them to you as regular people living as celebrities in America. They're slaves. They're priests and priestesses on the left-hand side, man. Meant to confuse you. Campaign rallies can feel like Roman games in modern clothes. See? Civilizing mission. Rome saw itself as the bearer of law, order, and civilization to the provinces. America frames itself as spreading democracy, capitalism, and freedom worldwide. Both projects carry idealism and imperial undertones. Okay? It's basically white supremacy. See? Edomite supremacy, though. That's really what it is. Rome extended citizenship slowly to the conquered peoples until almost all freemen of the empire were Romans. America has extended its rights through the amendments and civil rights movement, redefining who is an American. Signs and strengths. Rome's declining factors. Overextension, internal corruption, political violence, economic inequality, and loss of civic virtue. See, and that goes to the book of Sirach. Let's get that. Let's get the book of Sirach 10, right? The 10th chapter. Sirach 10 and 8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. See that? And see the Lord, let's get the book of 2nd Esdras 11, which prophesies of Rome. All right. 2nd Esdras 11 and 39. Art thou not it that remainest of the four beasts whom I have made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them? Expounding on Daniel, the 7th chapter, the four beasts we told you about. The Assyrian, Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Greeks, and the Romans. Okay? But he said the fourth is the kingdom that the end would come through. See, because it will be revived. That's the image of the beast living through this system. And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past and had power over the world with much great fearfulness and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. And this is what Rome did. And America would mimic this. And so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit, for the earth hast thou not judged with truth. So they would eventually rule the earth and be a judge over it through its policy. And now we know that DC is a big part of that, which DC has high level occult, witchcraft, Mason, all right, Satanism. The influence is there. They're presenting unto you Canaan, Babel. They're presenting the gods of the ancient world through the acts, through the things that are happening, through the culture. You're worshiping the image of the beast, man. And the fourth overcame all the beasts that were past and had power over the whole world with great fearfulness and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. For thou hast not judged the earth with truth, man, and you dwelt on the earth with deceit. For thou hast afflicted the meek, hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit. Who is this talking about? Who did this? Pookie and Ray Ray? Yeah, now let's point the finger at who the finger really need to be pointed at. Esau did this. This is what Rome did. And we see the same damn thing happening here through Babylon, through America. And see, therefore, thy wrongful dealings are come up to the highest, man. And the highest have looked upon the proud times, and thy pride is getting ready to be dealt with. All right, and ended. See? And the purpose of this beast falling for good is that in verse 46, the earth be refreshed and return being delivered from thy violence, that she may hope for the judgment and the mercy of him that made her. So the final rulership will rule with the energy of the fourth beast. And it would blaspheme Yahweh Bashim Yahushua on a level that is huge. It's not a little thing. So I just wanted to get into that. Thought it was interesting. I mean, there's so much more we could have got into. But I mean, you can definitely look up, the aspect, now these Christians are heavy into, all roads lead to Rome, pagan Vatican, so people are bringing out things, Why is there an Egyptian obelisk in Washington, D.C.? All right, that goes 666 feet. Something is tied to the 666. As a matter of fact, let's type that up. Washington obelisk 666. The Washington Monument 666 phrase to a long-standing internet rumor that the monument has a dimension of 6,666 feet. While the height and base and the dimensions are close to those numbers, they are not exact. Oh, okay, whatever. Okay, whatever. So that's a conspiracy theory. Well, all of the conspiracies have become true. But why is there an obelisk in Washington? Why is an Egyptian obelisk in Washington? Okay, because ultimately, did not the Greeks, real quick, did the Greeks and Romans study the gods of Egypt, Canaan, and Babel. Let's see. That's a fascinating thread to tug, but yes, the Greeks and Romans absolutely looked sideways at gods of Egypt, Canaan, and Babylon, though always through their own cultural lenses. This is why the scriptures say spiritual Sodom and Egypt. Those kingdoms were ran by Hamites. So that because Ham carried the philosophy of the serpent into the world after the flood. So Esau had to go back to the Hamites to get their rulership, and the Greek and Roman empires were basically, all right, they were rooted in the gods of these nations. This is why today you have the Trinity, Christmas, right? The Planned Parenthood, which is Molech, Greek fascination from the Herodotus. Herodotus said almost all the names of the gods came into Greece from Egypt. See? Rome carried this further. So it's the same systems. The Greeks got into Tammuz, Marduk. So yes, the Greeks and the Romans studied and absorbed and reinterpreted Egyptian, Canaanite, and Babylonian gods. By late Rome, the empire was a spiritual supermarket where Jupiter, Isis, Mithras, Yahweh, and Christ were all worshipped. So even in the Roman histories, you had those who were worshiping Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. The followers of Yahweh Shai were written about in Roman history. And see, the prophets are now back doing the revival of Rome, because that's what, this is the kingdom that pierced our Lord, right? Romans 1 and Revelation, I'll end it off here. Revelation 1 and 7. It says, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all the kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him, even so, amen. So those who pierced him, that takes you back to the Roman soldiers, right? John 19 and 34, but one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and there came out blood and water. See that? So they who pierced him is the Roman soldier. So when he comes back, he's coming to that very system that pierced him. But this time he ain't going to meet them as a man. And you best believe this devil is going to fight against the second coming of who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. All right, through his military, his AI, his left-handed angels, man. So I just wanted to get into that. I know it's a little bit all over the place, but hopefully I'll edify. Shalom.